You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent, episode number 98.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. If it's your first time checking out the show, welcome. We're glad you're here. And if you're a returning listener, well, thanks for coming on back and putting up with Chris. We appreciate that. Show notes today will be at thelongerhaul.com/episode 098. That's thelongerhaul.com/episode 098. If you enjoy the show, and we'd love for you to subscribe to that so you make sure you get it each and every week, or at least when they come out, right? Because in the summer, that's not as much. But we're still here.
We're still here. 98's not too shabby there, Jody.
No.
And you did half of those just right by yourself, which is pretty impressive. So that's good, man. Approaching 100, the big 100. Can't wait.
I know. And you'd think we'd have something really big planned, but we don't.
I got an idea. I can't tell you on air, though.
I think we have lots of ideas.
I got a big idea.
Ideas are never our problem. It's never our problem. It's everything else.
Yeah.
So anyway, hey, that's Chris. Over there.
Yeah. So I'm a youth pastor in Georgia. For those of you who are listening for the first time, thanks for jumping in. Youth pastor in Georgia. Got a kid in college. Got a kid in high school, and been here for about 15 years at my current church. And Jody was here pretty close here in Marietta. Is where we're at. We're kind of in Atlanta, but Jody was here for a while, but now he lives in the big California.
California.
I want to come out so bad, by the way. I still want to.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
It's true. Well, not to see you. I want to go to Disneyland.
When you keep going to the wrong Disney, so I don't understand. Every time.
That's not true. But yeah, man. So we're a couple of youth pastors. This is what we actually are youth pastors that do youth ministry. That's what we do for a living. And so Jody started this as a little bit of a side ministry thing, and it's what we still do. And we love investing in other youth pastors. We've got the Facebook group where we're able to connect to people a little bit more on a personal level. There's not a ton of traffic on our Facebook page, which I actually kind of like. It tends to be more very specific type questions that gals are going through, which is super helpful, and you'll get more very intentional responses there. So it's good.
I would just like to say, up until this past week, I mean, because we had several hundred youth pastors in that super secret group, right?
Yeah.
But up until this week, super encouraging group. It's been amazing. Lots of good questions that do come out.
Yeah.
But then
what
this
happened
last week? No, they started a rebellion.
Did Philip do something?
No.
Who did?
They started a rebellion, and now there's like this Chewy's meetup without me.
That okay?
That's not okay. That is not okay.
Well, Jody, since we're talking about networking today. That's what our podcast is about today. And listen, surely
someplace else.
Surely you support us, and you want us to be healthy.
100% do not support.
Not like physical healthy from going to Chewy's, but healthy in spirit and love by going. Yeah, I'm just saying. I think there's some wisdom.
No. I'm not even going to play. I'm not even going to pretend like I'm even not bitter. I'm super bitter. I can't even not be bitter.
Kyle, man, it was Kyle Ruff who threw it out there. Kyle's like, "Hey, let's go to Chewy's."
I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. For a second, I thought about kicking him out of the group.
Well,
I was close, and then I thought that would not be a Christ-like.
For the record, also, just to rub that in even more, I'm about 99% certain that I'm going tonight. I'm just going to throw that out there as well. And people get sick of hearing about it. But anyway, that's because the people that get sick of hearing about it have clearly,
they're my friends.
They've never had the creamy jalapeno. Because if they had, they would understand.
Well,
obsession.
I think the people that get sick hearing about it, they're my friends because they need
Yeah.
to know that every time you go, which is more than you should, that you send me a picture or a video of you eating.
That's fair. But the group is great. There's way more than Chewy meetups. There's, people with real questions, and there's even an opportunity for right now for Dan Navarra, who does the youth pastor compensation survey. He threw a thing on there. He's been on the show and he's doing this year's, so there's like stuff like that. Friends of the podcast are on there. Yeah. So anyway,
it's a great group. In all seriousness, it's a great group.
And it is a way to network. We're talking about networking today, and it is a small. We're going to talk in more detail about that, but it is a way to stay connected to some like-minded folks, and that's a real win for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's good, and for all the people in the group who have reached out and said, "Look, we're not there either. We're with you. We'll have to do something else. I don't know what we'll do."
That's it.
We'll have to have like a virtual Not Chewy's meeting.
Yeah, man. Good deal. Well, hey, just a little shout out right now to our sponsors. We have some amazing folks that take care of us. It does cost us a little bit to put this on every year with the hosting and the different things, and we don't make money doing it. But our sponsors are able to help make it to where we don't have to spend our own money to do it, which is beautiful. So shout out to the Georgia Student Ministry Network. Those guys are amazing. Have really been an encouragement to us. Also, big time props to my buddy Alec Ammons, who does our graphic work for us. And if you're looking for someone, he actually connected recently, I think, with one of our guys on the page and is doing some design stuff for him.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for somebody to do some graphic design, if you need like a sermon series idea or a game and you're just not gifted in that, he's very affordable. He understands what we all do. He's not free. We wouldn't want him to do it for free anyway, because he's going to spend time doing it. But anyway, great guy, Alec Ammons. You can connect with him either on the Facebook group or on just by going to the show notes page. Big time props though to YM360 and all the work they do for us.
Yeah, hey, you went to the Clear conference,
I did go to
right?
the Clear conference, and it was ridiculous. It was amazing. Took my team actually, and we had a great time. It's a preaching and teaching conference, more preaching and just phenomenal. We had a blast, but man, they're just killing it in every area, whether it's publishing or whether it's camp or even the Clear conference. One of the things they just came out with that's really, really good that I really just want to mention is this devotional that Andy Blanks wrote called Wake Up. This thing is hot off the press. And if you're looking for like a little devotional that you could hand out, I say little, it's actually pretty beefy, that you could give to your students or maybe buy some and sell to your students. This Wake Up devotional is just awesome. It's called Wake Up, Discovering a Passion for God in the Bible. And it's just well done. Andy's got such a great heart for ministry and for students. And so check it out. Go to YM360. There's a promo code, the longer haul, that'll get you, how much is it off? 75%? 80%?
20%.
Oh, it's 20%.
20% off everything.
Yeah, not everything.
No, that's not true.
But yeah, that's good. So anyway, hey man, excited about the show today. Are you excited?
For sure. Yeah. Great topic for us. Super important.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, so it's not like, but it's one of these type of topics that from time to time we want to come back to over and over again. And so you and I talked about the networking and the impact it's had, on us back in episode 59. But today we've got a special guest that will really help us to dig a little bit deeper and also give us some ideas on how to network, but maybe even how to start networks, the impact this thing has had on him and more particularly his community. Because Zach Wyatt, who's going to be on here in a second, is from Chattanooga, and the Chattanooga Youth Pastors Network is unbelievable. Like it is so amazing, and they just do some amazing stuff. They just put on a conference here. This is where I really connected with Zach he and I've already connected. I mean, but we connected again, and I went up and spoke at the conference. But seeing what they were able to pull off as a network was just incredible. I was super encouraged, and even in that moment, I was like, I want to get Zach on sometime just to pick his brain a little bit. So this should be fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think lots of things. I mean, truth be told, this podcast really exists still because of networking. So
Yeah, no doubt about it.
big impact on both of us too. So,
Yep.
all right,
Okay.
should we get started?
Let's jump in.
All right, here we go.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
So networking.
Hey, Zach, how you doing, man?
Doing well, Chris, Jody.
Appreciate you taking some time out. How's Chattanooga, man? You guys doing all right up there?
We're doing great. It's still a little bit of heat blazer up here, but yes, it is doing well.
Is this, Jody, is it hot in California, like crazy hot still?
Not where I am.
Good night.
It's actually been real nice.
Dude, if you were here in Georgia still, you'd be blowing your it's crazy. It is nuts.
It is.
How
like
hot
broke
it is.
records yesterday. It is insane.
I don't really feel sorry for you.
No, you should. So
because in the summer it was triple digits here for let's see, all of summer. So it's
awesome.
Nice to have cooler weather.
So Zach, you live up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and not going to lie, Chattanooga is one of my favorite towns on the entire planet. It is a great city, mainly because I'm a little bit of a foodie, and there are some amazing places like
Birthplace of the moon pie,
like Aretha Frankenstein's, which is ridiculous. But how long have you been there in Chattanooga now?
Yeah, I've lived here my whole life. I love Chattanooga so much, never left. My wife and
awesome.
Born here. I actually grew up like 2 blocks from Aretha Frankenstein's.
That's amazing.
And so, yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, we love it here. And unless God takes us away, we love it here.
Well, we're going to do a deep dive into some networking stuff here, but tell us a little bit of your story. How did you get to know? How did you come to know Christ, and how did youth ministry become part of your journey? And maybe even connect the dots as far as when did you start helping out with the networking thing? Just give us the rundown as why somebody should even trust what you're telling them right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Other than the fact that you're on the longer haul, so obviously.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. And I too am a fan of creamy jalapeno. I don't know if that was going to come up later. So
yeah, baby.
That should be a big part of everyone's story. So I might meet up with you. So I grew up here in Chattanooga my whole life. Grew up in church, and that was a big part of my family's story. When I was 10, I remember just needing a savior, and through a Sunday school teacher and through the pastor just preaching the gospel to me, and just realizing my need for a savior. Came to know Christ, but my parents, they took me to church, but they didn't really disciple me, and I didn't really have a youth group, and until I was a senior in high school, and I had a youth pastor who came into my life, who walked with me, discipled me, loved me well. I'd really just kind of floundered up to that point, struggled with insecurity, struggled with some anxiety, and now seeing how God had used that in student ministry. But when I was a senior, God had put this youth pastor in my life who really showed me what it meant to disciple. He walked with me for the next couple of years. He stepped away from that church when I was probably a freshman in college. And then, like a lot of youth pastors, I just kind of fell into youth ministry. The pastor said, "Hey, would you help teach Sunday school?" And there were only a handful of students. I was a sophomore in college at this point, and I just started teaching Sunday school. And that turned into serving in student ministry over the next couple of years. And I began to love it. I began to love students. I began to want to spend time with them, want to disciple them, want to shape them. Did everything wrong in the book like everyone else does when they're starting out, and probably still do, but began to love it. That turned into an opportunity for a job. Stayed at that church for about 6 years, and then transitioned to another church where I was there for about 10 years on staff. while I was at that church is where I got connected with the organization I'm with now called the Chattanooga Youth Network.
So you've 16 years of full-time youth ministry before you started doing the networking thing full-time. That's not shabby there, brother.
No. Actually, the first time, absolutely. I was at that first church about part-time. So I've been able to experience both bivocational ministry and full-time ministry.
Which is also awesome.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And getting to know the Chattanooga Youth Network had a huge impact in my life, because being able to get to know other youth ministers, being able to, and I had a heart for it my whole time. I had a heart for connecting with other ministries, realizing a part of it was just a craving in my life to say, I don't know how to do all of this on my own.
Come on.
Part of it was realizing I can't do everything well. And I was not afraid to ask for help. And so our director, who's still our executive director, started the Youth Network 25 years ago, Tony Souter, who I know is a friend of your ministry.
Yep, he's been on.
He was very intentional with me and other youth ministers in our area. He pursued me when I was at my first church, but we really developed a relationship when I was at the last church I was at for 10 years. And we just developed a relationship. He networked me. I came to the regular network lunches, the trainings, the opportunities to connect with other youth pastors. And because of that, I felt comfortable to say, okay, let's do some retreats together, guys. Let's do some D-Nows together. And let's just do some Wednesday nights together. And so I developed that heart of networking with some of these other youth pastors.
That's good.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that you kind of got duped into being a student pastor, and then you just stayed. That's
we can't get out of it.
We just want you to teach this class forever.
Yeah.
And then,
I made $25 a month starting out. So, yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how you get duped. Yeah. You tell a 19-year-old, there, $25 a month.
When I got duped, I did it for free. So at least I think I got duped and did it for a year. And then they were like, hey, we're going to pay you a little. And it was about the same. It was like, and I was driving like half an hour. So I was losing money because I was spending so much in gas getting back and forth.
That's amazing. And they took taxes out on it, which was amazing.
Yeah, they didn't do that for me.
I loved it. I loved it. So I came on to the Youth Network almost 4 years ago, and it's been an incredible transition. And love Tony, love getting to work with him. What kind of in your connection with Tony? Tony had started an initiative called the Pray For Me campaign, which really helps the church rally around the next generation, building intergenerational relationships, and that kind of took him away from connecting, coaching, caring for youth leaders. And he had come to me and said, look, we need someone to kind of fill that gap, to kind of serve our youth leaders, and felt like I'd be a good fit for that. And it's been a great fit. And so I've been doing this almost 4 years now.
That's awesome. So let's, Chris, do you want to start? I have a question, unless you have something. I know you have a list.
Go ahead. What you got?
No. So, I would love to just, so I always have two thoughts when we're doing this. One is I think of like the young me that got duped, right? And so part of that is me realizing I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know where to go for help. Like, I don't know about you. I remember those initial years, man, I was reading everything I could get my hands on, and good, bad, or different. If I thought something seemed fun, not safe, but fun to me, because I was pretty young, then we did it, which didn't always work out really well. I had a really hard time sometimes getting the ear of other youth pastors who'd been around for a while, even though I felt like I needed that. So as somebody who kind of stumbled into youth ministry as well, recognizing you needed to learn and figure things out, and others knew that, like, what's the first step? Like, what would you tell a guy who's just starting out, who doesn't really have, or even somebody new to an area? Like, I felt that moving in here, kind of, okay, now I'm having to learn where things are. I don't know where to even go for, like, things that I've done forever. I don't know where to go do those things anymore. And so the need for network I still feel that. but kind of what would you say is like a first step in kind of starting that?
Yeah, I think typically when guys are looking for help, there are typically going to be people who are willing to say, yes, I will. Man, I'm willing to come. Other youth pastors in the area, even if there's not a network, if there's nothing established, if a young guy, I was with a guy yesterday, he's fresh out of college, and I don't think he's as much as looking for resources as much as he's looking for a relationship. But
Yeah.
for him, he even said that in our network yesterday, but he's looking for something. Those other guys are going to be willing to come to him, whether there's a network or not. When there are people who say, man, I'm just looking for help, people are going to be willing to, other youth pastors, more seasoned or veteran guys are going to say, man, I'm willing to come to you and help. If someone is coming to you and saying, hey, I want to build a relationship or I want to start an event together, a lot of people are going to be or hold you at arm's length because they're going to go, what's your agenda?
Yep. Especially if you roll up, if you roll up into town and you're the new guy, and you're like,
yeah,
absolutely. The little chihuahua going nuts, and hey, I'm here. I want to do something awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, exactly. And no, you're right. That happens too often, unfortunately. But if you come with like a place of humility of, guys, I'm really just looking for a relationship, but I'm also looking for ideas. I met with one of our inner city guys the other day, and he started just calling the big churches in our town, and he's built several good relationships with our youth pastors because he was like, look, I'm looking for new ideas. I've been trying something for a couple of years. It just hasn't worked. And he has several guys on his team now from our area just because of his approach.
Yeah, I think starting with relationships is key, right? So just trying to go sit down and have coffee, try to go sit down and have lunch, like just hearing other youth pastors, youth workers, hearing their story a bit, understanding their context a little, and then going from there is always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I would always, whether you're taking it from that angle or you are wanting to start a network, if there's nothing established, try to get to know your area. Find out, okay, are there already denominational gatherings? What's the history? Is there racial tension in the area? Or is there denominational tension in the area? Find out what kind of history is happening. Talk to your church. Talk to the senior leaders in your church. Talk to people about the history and just really try to cultivate those things. Find out as much as you can about the community, especially if you're new, about the history of that community before you even dive in. And then build relationships without an agenda. I think that's so crucial. I think we want to come in and we're very eager. I know I was sometimes to say, hey, let's do an event. Like, man, we want to reach students. We want to see students come to know Jesus. We wanted to disciple students. But I think so many people are held at arm's length. I talked to a youth pastor in Dallas area the other day who he was having such a hard time to find other youth pastors who would partner with him, so much so that he had to do an event out in 100-degree weather on a track because they could not do it at a church because no one trusted anybody. And he's just trying to do whatever he can to get someone to trust him. And I just thought that's where we are, unfortunately, is just trying to find ways to build relationships without an agenda. Like you just said, Jody, invite people out, coffee or a meal, just to say, hey, look, tell me about your family. Just tell me about your story. We don't even have to talk ministry. Let's just build relationships and try to get to know one another.
I've got this bouncing around in my mind. I almost think that Zach can tell me if you kind of agree or disagree if I'm getting it wrong. But it's almost like there's a difference between networking and actually having a network. And that sounds a little weird, I guess, but here's what's in my mind. I think you can almost go into it where if you go into it rather than trying to start a network, but if you start off with just, I'm going to network with people, that's really what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
trying to start this big thing necessarily, but rather I'm just going to connect with people and I'm going to build friends. We had a great middle school ministry network here for a little while. They all moved away, left me hanging. But when I started it, in my mind, in the back of my mind was like, I want to start a network. But what I didn't do was go, hey, I want to take you to lunch because I want to tell you about this network that I'm starting. But rather, I just said, hey, let's just go to lunch. And it took time. I mean, I think it takes a little time before you can really establish that, as, hey, we're actually something official here. And then if the relationships get built and trust is built, like you were talking about, then maybe out of that you go, hey, we should do an event together. And now everybody trusts each other, as opposed to starting off with, hey, I want to take you to coffee so I can invite you to come to my big event. It's all about the relational part of that thing. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, you think about our own ministries. How long does it take before trust is built with our students and with our families before we can really get anywhere? And it takes months, if not years, before our parents trust us, before leadership trusts us. And, I've been doing this almost 4 years. And just yesterday, at our we have an East Brainerd network, which is a suburb of Chattanooga. And we're sitting around, and we actually meet in churches, which I'll explain why we do that here in just a minute. And one of our youth pastors basically just says, "Hey guys, I would love for us to start meeting, doing some events together. I would love for us to start doing some D-nows together, retreats together." I don't know what that looks like, but it was very organic. It wasn't led by me. I didn't prompt any of that. But what had happened is all of these guys started saying, "You know what? We've been together for a couple years together now." And just to see this happening, to see this swell kind of start stirring within each of these youth pastors was so encouraging. And it was so, and I was saying, we can get behind this as the youth network, but to see it organically happening among these youth pastors was so encouraging to see that happening.
So, okay, that's a good point. So let me back up and ask a different first question. Maybe for the sake and help of like the rest of our kind of frame our conversation a bit. Can you give just maybe a short overview of when you're talking about your network, because now, you're talking about, it's broad, right? Like it's probably a little more extensive than what most would think. Maybe give a little bit of an overview of how that looks and functions. And then as a follow-up, what are the benefits to, like the real benefits to the network itself? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, say that one more time, Jody. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's just give like an overview maybe of kind of what the network that you're a part of there looks like.
Yeah. So what we used to do is we used to just meet at restaurants, which was really great because it was a neutral location, especially as they got to know me. And meeting over chips and salsa was always great. And then we started to actually got this idea from one of our denominational gatherings, but we started to meet in churches, and we would rotate. We have several networks. We have a couple in North Georgia and a couple in Chattanooga, and they each meet once a month. And what I will do is I will send out an article ahead of time. It could be on student ministry, it could be on leadership, it could just be on self-care, it could be on whatever. And I don't want it to be just on student ministry alone. And we kind of have this 3-tier we call it like a three-legged stool that we want our ministry to be focused on: your personal walk with God, your family life, and strategic ministry. And so we kind of build everything around that three-legged stool. And so when we're together, we talk about the article, we eat together, we have a great time of fellowship, and we always pray together. And we found being in a church together, one, they're getting to see each other's turf. And so we're rotating. We're never in the same church each year. And so they're getting to see one another's turf, which, for lack of a better term. And so it breaks down that territorialism. And they're also just being able to pray together. It's a much more intimate space. And it's just we've been so encouraged to see what God's done in and through that. And it's not agenda driven. Like, I do not drive the idea of, hey, we're coming together to plan an event. I may promote something like, okay, we just did a Southeast Youth Leaders Conference that Chris mentioned earlier. I may promote something like that because it's a training that we're doing. But there's no events like we're coming together to do an event or anything like that, because I want them to feel like this is a very safe place for them. So,
yeah, I think that's really helpful. Because I know for a long time, even when I started hearing about a network, youth pastor network, it's like, oh, that sounds awesome, but I don't know what that is. I just knew I needed people around me, right? And I wanted to get to know other guys, and then it kind of turned. We had a similar deal for a while.
I think so. Yeah,
we met once a month, right, Chris? Wasn't it once a month and we would rotate around. Everybody take different turns, hosting. Kind of that, and you generally pick kind of a little bit of a topic, and somebody would facilitate some discussion, and then we would go grab lunch after, if we could. And it was good, man. It was really good. It was super beneficial for me. Except I met this guy, Chris.
Yeah, it's funny.
And from there,
what's interesting?
All downhill.
What's interesting is I think our listeners right now are falling, in several different categories as they listen to this. And networking, it all depends on the context in which you're doing ministry. For Jody, for you and I, one of the things that was really always hard for me with our network is I live in Atlanta, and just in my 10-mile radius alone, I could create a network. I mean, there's enough churches, enough youth pastors. And so when you and I were going to that network together here in this area, it was actually, you guys really, like, I would network and I would come to that, but that was like a 30-minute drive for me. And it really wasn't with many churches that we had overlap with at all. And
right.
I did it because it was important to me, so I made it happen. But there was that distance, and it's why for me, when I did the middle school ministry network here, that was more hit closer to home for me because it was folks that were actually doing the same thing or whatever, right? So that's my context, and Zach, even up in Chattanooga, it's not a rural area. There's enough churches in Chattanooga and the surrounding areas that the same thing is true. However, there's some folks listening, they're in the context. I always think of my in-laws who happen to be hanging out with me this weekend. And, they're north of Mobile in Leroy. They go to First Baptist Leroy, and it's a great church. And, but I always think of folks like that are in that setting, where if you're the youth pastor of that type of church, man, there may be 2-3 other youth pastors in a 50-mile radius, even, I mean, exactly. It's a completely different challenge. And I suspect some of our listeners are in places where either one, they're in a rural type setting, or they're in a setting where there just happens to not be a lot of youth pastors, other youth ministers, volunteer, part-time, full-time, whatever, or they're in a place where there's just not anything healthy happening. What would you say to those type of folks? What are some tips we could maybe give them with how they could create that community? Because that seems like a challenge to me.
Yeah, a couple things going through my head on ways that one, depending on their context, are they full-time, or are they part-time, or volunteer? And then if they are rural. So we do actually have a couple networks in North Georgia, and we go down into like the Dalton, Chatsworth area. And so we have some of our guys that they have to drive 30, 45 minutes to a network just because of where they are.
Yep.
And so I get that. And the more rural areas you go, there's just not as many full-time guys and girls. And so it can be a challenge for some of them to come to a network lunch that meets on a Thursday during lunch. But we also want to serve those people who are bivocational and volunteer. And so one of the ideas that we've seen with our friends at National Network of Youth Ministries, what they'll do is they've encouraged, and they actually will start up these, they don't meet every week or every month, is they'll do these like Saturday meetups, and they'll do breakfast for the bivocational or the volunteer leaders. And
That's
so
great.
It is a little bit more of a challenge, but just doing that. And so encouraging, these leaders to say, hey, look, let's just grab breakfast once every other month. Let's meet at Cracker Barrel, and let's find some time together. And of course, they're going to have to initiate some conversations, initiate some relationships with some leaders. But maybe there's a full-time leader that has a little bit more time in that area that can start that and has a heart for somebody that's in those roles. And so that's a couple of the ideas. But I think that definitely especially I have a heart because I was in bivocational ministry for several years of trying to find ways to serve those leaders.
You could even really now, I think sitting down, sharing a meal is always helpful. Man, you could even jump on a Zoom call, right? Or Skype,
absolutely.
or FaceTime or whatever with a small network, if that's easier. There's so many ways to connect now that are available to us that weren't available even just a few years ago. So I think that's so the excuses are being removed, right? And the barriers are being broken down in so many ways, which is awesome. Just requires being intentional.
Oh, absolutely. I can not, agree with that more. And I think, whether you're in a rural area, or I think there's so many things you do. I think youth pastors are doing a great job of trying to invest in their schools. Find other youth pastors that are investing in the same schools that you're in. The whole goal of networking is to get out of isolation, is to find relationship with like-minded people who are walking through the same things that you're walking through, that you can do life with, that you can talk about some of your successes, failures, that you can pray together with, you can share resources, you can build a relationship with. So maybe you're both serving as chaplains or character coaches at a school together. Well, while you're at the school together, maybe you can connect. Maybe you can go grab lunch together. Maybe you can both serve as a chaplain at a football team together, but you're both coming 30 minutes two opposite ways. So it's hard for you to meet up in other times. Just find times to connect. Maybe it's over a school, maybe it's for other reasons, but hopefully you can find those opportunities.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that idea of. I was thinking earlier. Y'all mentioned just a minute ago the idea of maybe doing something online. I wonder, Zach, have you seen anybody like successfully do that, or heard any stories of any guys that have, or guys and girls that have done that? That doesn't seem to be I've not seen that yet, like in a networking context. And I'm thinking it needs to be, like a Facebook, youth pastors Facebook group might be a place to find somebody. Like if you're in that place where you're just sort of isolated and there's nobody around you, and you're going to have to reach outside of your area for whatever reason. But I don't think being on a Facebook group is the same as networking. Especially, like almost every youth, almost every Facebook group I see. There's some encouragement, but a lot of crazy, just insanity even.
Not
Not yet. It hasn't
not
happened
ours.
Yet.
Not ours. Not ours.
and nor will it, because I'll be quick to
Yeah.
just destroy it. But anyway, but I wonder what it would look like to sit down intentionally on, a Google Hangout or a whatever Skype call, whatever type of, where everybody's sitting there. But it might be weird. I'm trying to think of what would that be like? Like, would that be good, bad? I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's all in who's kind of leading that. It'd have to be, I think, led really well. I've been part of some coaching groups online that I think have been done well. But I think you're still missing. It's just kind of like church online. I think you're still missing community when you're doing it online only. If you have an opportunity where you're building relationship face to face outside of that, but you meet up online,
almost to supplement
yes,
man, we're only going to be able to get together once every couple of months, but we could be sitting in front of our computer though and sit down and go around the computer screens and go, man, what's new in your world? How you doing? What's something we could be praying for you for, kind of thing. That might
absolutely.
be, that might be amazing.
That sounds really healthy, actually.
When you think networking, tell us some stories of how networking has helped in big ways, and then maybe how networks can maybe help in just some small ways. So because I've seen big, gigantic things come out of networks. I mean, the big conference y'all just did came out of networking, right? And came out of y'all's network. And what are some big things that you've seen networks pull off?
Yeah. You just mentioned we just did the Southeast Youth Leaders Conference in August, end of August, and that was a part of our networks being together, and that was just years of relationships. One story that comes to mind, and this is just one of our local networks, is last year in Dalton. This is not a great story by any means, or an encouraging story, but one of our youth pastors, a middle school pastor in the community, died by suicide. And it was just heartbreaking. And this was a youth pastor that become a dear friend of mine. And he was connected with us really well, connected to our networks, had been coming for the previous year. We had just launched that network the year before. He would come, he would ask just really sincere, dear questions. And it caught all of us just totally off guard. And what we found was that only his parents and his fiance, sadly, he was engaged to be married, were the only ones who knew about the deep depression that he was struggling with and living with. But what ended up happening, and he'd served at a church that had a couple other youth staff on, is that church had also had a suicide earlier that year in the student ministry. And so you could just imagine the church just reeling right then. Our youth pastors, who had not been networked, had not come together in that community until that last year, just came alongside that church in such a powerful way to serve the students, to serve that staff. I could not have been more encouraged to see them praying for them, loving them. It was beautiful to see in the midst of such heartache, to see such pain, and it brought our network together in a way. And there's still obviously pain, there's still obvious anguish, but to see our network, I'm closer with that group of men than I ever could have been. And
that foundation had been laid, though. And as a result of that foundation, everybody just immediately did what they would naturally need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, that's huge. Yeah. Have you seen also just big events as well?
Absolutely. So we
and let's be clear, we're not saying, and you're not saying, and I'm not saying that in order to have a network or in order to network, you have to do these big event type things.
Yeah.
But that can be a benefit that happens,
Absolutely.
Right?
So we tell people, look, we don't want to be known for big events. We want to be known for relationship. And we've seen that time and time again.
Huge.
If you ask a youth pastor, what tell us what the impact the youth network has had on you. They'll talk about relationship. That means we're hitting our mark. But at the same time, we've seen, for example, for a couple years, we saw an event called Super Awesome Weekend, which, is there a better name for an event than Super Awesome Weekend? Come out where a dozen or more churches have come together to do a retreat together, and across denominational lines. I mean, there were maybe a dozen or more, and there was probably 5 or 6 denominations there, and it was just an incredible event up at Ocoee Ridge Camp, and the 300 plus kids there. And so seeing that, we've done couples retreats that have come out of our network this past spring. And so lift tours come to Chattanooga with Jeff Wallace, Brent Crow, that crew, just because of the youth network that wasn't here before. And so we've seen big events like that, and then seeing little pockets, like I described with the other network earlier, of people that are doing things together, whether it's DNow or retreats together, or just coming together for combined worship nights on a Wednesday night because of networks that would not have happened. And saying, hey guys, let's get together. Fields of Faith the events are bigger because of networks, because of relationships, whether it be a FCA Fields of Faith or what have you.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, man, that's really good. And again, we're not saying you have to, but also keep in mind those big events just don't. Everything you're saying, like the things y'all been able to pull off, and other networks that I've seen that have pulled off big DNow, weekends or whatever that might be. Ultimately, that has come out of that network has been established for a little while, and then they've built up trust, and they do that together. But in some ways, what's been amazing is they're able to pull off things that individual churches, maybe just due to size or budget constraints, they might not can pull off on their own. But when they come together, all of a sudden they are able to bring in that speaker. They are able to bring in that music, or that band or whatever, or the illusionist or whoever, kind of thing. So that's really, really cool. What are some just small ways that you've seen, just little, like the little things?
Well, I love to see. I love seeing churches network together. I tell people all the time, I was not the best youth pastor, but because of the power of the network, I have almost unlimited resources.
Yeah, that's great.
So I get calls all the time about simple things, about whether it's curriculum or camps or whatever. And I can say, hey, but a lot of times now what I'm seeing is people aren't just calling me, they're calling the guy they sit next to at their network.
Huge.
Which is beautiful. It's like when I was a youth pastor, I didn't want the youth ministry to be built on me. I wanted it. If the student remembered their youth leader, their small group leader more than they remember me, I consider that a win.
Yeah.
Well, in the same way, when they're leaning on those youth pastors next to them, because they're the ones that are in the ministry, they're the ones that are doing it. While I'm a high school small group leader now, they're the ones that are in it far more than I am. And so, so just seeing them lean on them for whether it's needing a van reference or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm blessed now to be on a team. So I've got some built-in networking when it comes to coming up with ideas and needing to bounce an idea off somewhere. So I'm thankful for that. But prior to that, well, let me say this also. Also, at the age of 49, having been in youth ministry as long as I have, I've got built-in networking relationships where I know that if I have an idea and I don't feel comfortable because I feel like, man, this is kind of a crazy idea, or I don't know if this would go over well at my church or not, I've got enough relationships after all these years of being in youth ministry that I could call Jody or whoever, and go, hey, man, I got this idea. I just need to bounce this off somebody before I tell anybody at my church about it. But when you're starting out, though, that's where networking is huge. Understanding that, man, if I'm in this church and I've got this idea of changing the way we do Sunday school or Bible study on Sunday mornings or the way we do Wednesday nights, but if I start talking to my youth workers, they're going to freak out. Wait, you're thinking about splitting middle school and high school? What are you talking about? We can't do, But if you have some networking, that's some small ways to me that just being able to call a friend and go, hey man, I just need to say this out loud to someone. And I need you to ask me the hard questions that your most difficult youth workers are going to ask you. That's where the networking is huge.
That's such a good word.
It's a small moment in a way, but in another way though, it pays huge reward, but that's where, I can't say it's enough. And one thing I've just said over the years, and I still feel this way. You have to be the one though, to make that effort to make that phone call, to find that person that is like-minded, to be willing to sit down and have lunch with you, or have coffee. And you have to be the one to get that started. All those years ago, somebody in Chattanooga, did Tony start it for all practical purposes? I mean,
he did.
Tony
original.
There could have been a whole lot of people sitting around going, man, you know what we need? We need this. We need this. But somebody's got to be the one to go. So I'm going to make a phone call. You got to start moving. You got to start making phone calls and start off just by building relationships.
Absolutely.
It's important. Yeah.
How do you protect the network? And I'm thinking in two ways. This is just a question I was just thinking about, like, as Chris is talking, like, how do you protect it in such a way that it continues and it doesn't lose momentum or lose steam? And so protecting that side. And then the other side, how do you protect it so that it doesn't turn into like just a complaint, gripe, gossip session about how bad everything is at everybody's churches? Not that we would ever do that.
Right. Yeah, it can devolve into that. And so your first thing was just protecting it. So I have to cultivate relationship a lot. So a lot of my time, every day I'm sitting across the table from a youth leader. I'm having breakfast or lunch or coffee, even though I don't drink coffee.
Time out. Stop. Hold up. I thought that was on the questionnaire before we let anybody come on. Like, what?
I know, it's like a requirement.
He slipped in.
I just don't know if I can trust the guy. You know what, everybody? Just ignore everything he said.
He did. He did write
beard too, and it throws people off.
He wrote vanilla bean frappuccino, and that's not coffee, I guess. That was on his application.
Yeah, the unicorn drink.
Oh my gosh! But just for the record, I would totally drink that. I'm just gonna throw that. I love sugary drinks, dude. I'd be down. I'll try that. Give me some of that.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I'm constantly cultivating relationships. And one of the things, talking about events earlier, one of the value in events is I'm calling leaders about, hey, I'm pointing to this or that. So I'm constantly cultivating a relationship, and I'm checking in on those things, those three-legged stool. Hey, tell me, how's your time with Jesus? Because to go back to that, churches aren't asking that question. Now, I know I'm shifting gears here.
No, it's good.
They're asking the question of, how's your numbers? They're asking the question of, unfortunately, that's all too often the case of the church leadership, deacons, elders are typically asking of, they may ask how you're doing in a general sense, but that's what they care about is, I borrowed this line from someone else, but noses, nickels, and noise. How many noses are in the seats? How much money's in the budget? How much noise or hype are you creating? And so I love to just say, hey, how's your relationship with Jesus? How's your relationship with your family? And then talking about strategic ministry. And so cultivating relationship is one way we protect that and making sure that the things are ongoing. And the value that I had is that there was 20 years of equity, over 20 years of equity that I came into because of Tony. So there was already that.
Right. And
then to answer your other question, you do have to be on guard of that. And so I think our articles are typically tend to be more encouraging. They can, for example, our article that we're working through right now that to kind of create discussion was about, it was an article that Eugene Peterson wrote in 1981 called The Unbusy Pastor, to talk about how when you and I, while it's not encouraging, it was more convicting. It creates discussion in a certain direction. And so yesterday our discussion was about how usually we project ourselves to be something. We project ourselves to be busy all the time. Why do we do that in ministry? So it goes in a certain direction. We try to, you have to have someone who's leading the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So that is an excellent question. And you do have to make sure someone's leading it away from deprecation all the time.
Or others' deprecation all the time.
That's good.
Others deprecate. Yeah, that would be the right term. Passive
It's just not healthy.
deprecation.
It's just not healthy at all.
Those things.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah. So, man, that's huge.
No, that's good.
Huge. Zach, as we get close to the end here, what else would you say that anything else just kind of on your mind, on your heart, as far as just that you would want to make sure you say to someone out there listening that's thinking about working a little bit harder at networking?
A lot of people out there, I mean, they're looking for networking. I've found a lot of people are looking for friends.
Yeah.
That's the thing that probably struck me the most when I started doing this, is that, they're looking for resources. They're looking for people to pray together. But youth pastors have been very honest with me about, when I came to this church, whether it's because of stage of life, that there's no other couples that are my wife and my age in our church, or my husband and my age in our church, that we just don't have any friends. There's no community. And so we're looking for people our age to be friends with. And so I think that's been
That's perfect.
That is right on
That's beautiful.
cue.
I'm sorry.
And
I'm just giving you a little movement.
Yeah, so they're just looking for relationship, and I'm always grateful when a youth pastor will be honest in a group of fellow youth pastors. Hey, I'm looking for relationship, and so I would say, pursue that, because if you don't have that, that is so vital. And a lot of times the spouse, suffers in silence. We say that all the time, but. If you can find ways, and that's like we did the couples retreat, we're trying to find ways to create those opportunities.
When our middle school ministry network was strong, one of the coolest things we did was we had a couple times where we had date night, where we said, hey, everybody, get a babysitter. Friday night, we're all going out to eat. We're all going to meet. And I would coordinate, I'd get a room somewhere like a, back room like we did on the border one time, and everybody came and we just hung out, no agenda other than just hanging out. And man, it gives the wives a chance to be a part of that. So that was huge.
No, I love that. The last thing I'd say is, and I get this from our friends at National Network Youth Ministry, and I encourage anyone that's not a part of a network to go to their website, youthworkers.net. I don't work for the National Network. I'm not, but if you're not a part of a network, go to their website, youthworkers.net. They have resources on getting a part of a network, starting a network. They have what's called a quick start guide. Everything that we hashtag on our website, on our social media, says hashtag better together. And I get that from our friends over there. That's so true. Everything, we're better together, and get out of isolation, and don't have the mindset. I've kind of walked through that when I've been in struggles to get in ministry. I've had some incredible times in ministry, and I've had some really difficult years in ministry, and don't have time to go through all those, but I've had some difficult years. And when you're in those difficult seasons, you want to be in isolation sometimes, all depending on your personality or makeup. Don't live there. And you need other people who are walking through ministry, who probably also walk through difficult seasons, to just say, hey, can you just listen to me through this season? And so we are definitely better together.
That's good.
Good stuff, man. Well, Zach, thanks a ton, man, for taking time to come on here. And Jody and I have both benefited from networking, and that's why we would take time now for a second episode to talk about it, because we feel, ultimately that it can have a huge impact on your longevity. You know, we're all about talking about longevity, both long term, if you want to do this as a career long term, or if you want to experience longevity just at the church that you're serving at. I think networking can impact both of those things. I think having people around you, whether it's a huge established network like Chattanooga, or whether or not you're just intentionally building up a group of friends around you that can be there for you, be an encouragement to you, that you can reach out to when needed. Both of those things, though, will ultimately help you experience this long term. I just don't know of a lot of people that have been doing this a long time that has it. Like, if you look at the makeup of how they've gotten there, I think almost everybody I can think of, the ones that have been experiencing longevity, almost every single one of them are pretty decent at this. You know, they're pretty good at networking and connecting with other folks. They don't just live on their island. But so this is huge, man. So thank you for your encouragement with all that, and pray that you'll keep doing what you're doing up there, man, in Chattanooga, and that'd be awesome. So Jody and I'll see you, by the way. We'll see you at Conclave this year. We're going to be doing we're going to be recording episodes and doing interviews in the exhibit hall again this year. So it'll be fun. Nice. I say that, I'm assuming you're coming, right? You're coming, right?
We will be there. We'll have a booth with the Pray For Me campaign.
Sweet.
And look forward to being there, and obviously networking.
Yeah, of course.
Like what he did there.
Sorry, that was terrible.
Awesome, man.
That's great.
Yep. You know the guys. You know, we're going to mention our sponsors. We'll just keep you on for a second because you actually know everybody. You don't know my intern guy, or not my intern guy, but the guy that's doing all of our graphic stuff. But Alec Ammons, we want to mention him again as we wrap this thing up. But also, all the guys at Georgia, right? They help support us. So all the
absolutely
the folks over at Georgia. So this Georgia Student Ministry Network, I think it's the Student Ministry Network.com. And then also YM360. You ever heard of YM360? They're this little group out of Birmingham.
I think I may have heard of Roger and Andy and Les and all that. Yeah.
So
they're doing pretty good work.
I think they're doing decent work. Yeah. So
yes.
Yeah, man, all great folks. So thanks to them.
Love those guys
for helping out. Jody, what do you got?
That's it. No, I think that about do it for this episode.
That's good, man. Good stuff. Well, thanks, Zach. We appreciate you big time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right, man.
We'll catch everybody later.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.